Welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure. This is a tale of Terminators, but actually it starts with Mantic's Deadzone, a sci-fi skirmish war game. Basically, there's a faction called the Enforcers. It's a kind of Star Trek type universe where humanity's expanded everywhere. Obviously, the evil corporations run the joint. Obviously, they're evil. You can't have good corporations. And there's some kind of plague breaking out on certain planets, and they quarantine it. That's what the dead zones are. And then they send in these space marine type forces called the peacekeepers, the enforcers, in to clean the joint up. And some are kind of space marine types, some are kind of space marine scout types, and some are Terminator types called the peacekeepers. But I didn't really rate the models. And then I came across the work of Mark Holmes, who's designed his own ZBrush Mark I Saturnine Terminators. And the price is right, because the price is free. And me, oh my, didn't they look lovely? And I got them printed, having downloaded them off my mini factory. A mate of mine kindly printed them off in some yellow resin I gave him, and I thought they looked fantastic. Now, because these ended up being printed out a little bit small, I thought, for Games Workshop standards, if you think that's the size of an orc, and these guys are supposed to be big hulking Terminators, because they were a bit small, I decided to use them actually as enforcers, and it was no loss because they fit in perfectly nicely with the scale of a standard human. Well, I say standard human infantry, but my understanding of how it works is you've got the peacekeepers, as they're called, which are basically Terminators, and the peacekeeper captain comes with effectively lightning claws, so he's going to be the peacekeeper captain. And you can equip them also with, so they come with a Dominator rifle, which is rapid fire and weight of fire. So that's clearly a storm bolter. Hello, storm bolters. And they come with an energy gauntlet. Well, I mean, I'm going to count that as an energy gauntlet, just a power fist. And or they can come with a Dominator rifle, storm bolter, and wrist blade. And how is that not a wrist blade? And then you mix them up, was my idea, with these Pathfinders, who are basically Space Marine Scouts. Now, I didn't like these miniatures at all, these Pathfinder miniatures. The heads really didn't do them justice. And so what I did was I thought, look, the bodies are all right. Well, I say all right, but, they're very indistinct, these trousers. I mean, I'll paint them and see how they go one day. Probably just a camouflage colour. But anyway, the bodies are, borderline acceptable. You can see a bit of musculature over there. But the heads from the Barbarian Frostgrey sprue was so much more characterful. And I thought, even though they were slightly bigger and bearded and wild looking, I thought, why not characterize all of these miniatures as kind of, not space wolves, but in this universe there are other kind of Scandinavians and peoples who hark back to the Vikings for their ideological forefathers, hopefully not any of them being fascist, but anyway, to the natural Viking forebears. And so I used these heads thinking, all these beards and slightly barbarian Ravager type hairdos, you know, from Guardians of the Galaxy. What's wrong with that? You know, they're quite characterful. Let's make sure that's in focus. Is that in focus? Yes, it is. And they're nicely sort of shouting and communicating with each other, which is what you want. And they kind of just about work together. And then that head, I thought, you know, look, let's give her a lady's head. She can be the boss, Dudette. And this is a head from Statuesque Miniatures, where I kind of screwed up because they came in, I think, 2 sizes. And one was kind of, I've forgotten the word, but basically above scale, like 32mm scale, heroic scale, that's what the phrase I'm looking for. And then there were kind of, you know, standard 25, 28mm heads, and I foolishly chose the 28mm heads. And so they weren't able to be used for the Games Workshop-y type things, but, you know, they just about fit on these. And there she is, with her artificial eyes, gesticulating, telling the boys who to gun down. And they all seem to have these kind of slightly sniper rifle type weapons. The Pathfinders come with a tag rifle with range 6, which is pretty good range for this game, but nothing else that distinguishes them. But you can make them specialists with a sniper rifle. They all seem to have sniper rifles, or we can just say they've all got tag rifles and finished. No armor piercing, but just good range. Yeah, so these would be the ranged part of the force, and then these guys, of course, would be the close combat and ranged part of the force. And that's obviously a las cannon, but I suppose we would call it a burst laser, which is range 8, suppression and weight of fire. Now, what I did in terms of painting was I undercoated these in Halford's white undercoat, and then I used one of the Games Workshop white contrast paints, and then I looked back and thought, these don't look bad. And then I kind of kind of wet, overbrushed white in various places, proper white, as kind of a highlight. And it looked a bit disappointing, and they were just an attack of whiteness. And then I remembered what someone said on one of my other videos. There's some very useful constructive feedback about the color wheel and how they look kind of indistinct if you then do another light color elsewhere, because the gold didn't act as a proper kind of spot color, I thought. And so for the first time, because normally my spot colors are a lighter color, so I use a darker color for red for the helmets, which I think is in keeping with the white scars, and did white dots, you know, inside the eyes to show that there is indeed a kind of a human scanning around what's going on. I mixed in a bit of black with the various Games Workshop silvers. Can't remember which one. It wasn't chainmail. I've run out of that one, alas. And the new Games Workshop paints I have don't have any body, so everything seemed to be quite liquidy and require multiple layers to build up, particularly these golds, which I think are aimed at the various Stormcasts. So they weren't great, but I just put washes and did a few highlights, mixing in mithril silver, and then I put a dark wash with largely black, what is called non-oil, with a little bit of the blue wash mixed in. And then when it was all dry, and I'd put a bit of varnish, matte varnish over all of them, what I did was I had some of these quite small Space Wolf transfers, these small Space Wolf transfers, and I put them on, and it gave them a bit of character. I mean, can you really see them amidst all of the weathering? And that's what I did. I did the usual of taking some packing material, dabbing it in Rhinox hide, and then dabbing it in places where I thought it would get scratched. I didn't do the stippling with a bit of extra white because there was already so much whiteness about. And then I took some of this stuff, Cromlech Weathering Powder's Dark Dirt, and I put a little bit of Lamian Medium into crevices, and then just went splatter with a bit of that and a old paintbrush, small old paintbrush, into the various crevices. And that's them. And so together these will be a bit of a crew. And then there is the dog drone and its burst laser, which is quite tough. And he's going to be simple. I might do these bits of armor in white, but otherwise he's just going to get dry brushed. He's going to get, undercoated chainmail and then dry brushed a bit. And he fits in quite nice scale-wise. And then he's going to be a Medibot. And can you tell where he's from? I paid way over the odds for him about 10 years ago when I started Malifaux. And he's never seen a game, but now he's found his purpose in life, saving these enforcers. And again, a reminder of the scale. There's your orc. I'll have a quick look at these before we end. And will I get around to painting these? Who knows? But they were quite fun. Another leader, should I need one? If I needed 2 units. Dudes with hammers. Came out quite nicely. Ah, there's the flamethrower. And aren't they gorgeous? And that's it for this time's Stompy 51's miniature adventure. Please do like this if you thought it was entertaining. Comment if you have any thoughts whatsoever to share. I'm open to constructive feedback. If you want to say, hey, there are other clever things you could have done with that white to make it look less white, that'd be great. Please do subscribe if you want to see me paint up the rest of these, or more likely at least just the Space Marine alternative scout models that I've conjured up here. But for now, it's say goodbye to my little friend. See you around.